Another piece of big Canucks-related news dropped today. Elliotte Friedman on the 31 Thoughts podcast alongside of Jeff Merrick talks about, in this edition, how the Vancouver Canucks could have gotten PK Subban. And this is not a thing where it's just like, oh, of course anybody could get Subban. Like, if he was on the market, anybody who had the right assets could have traded for him. No, the Canucks, they were close. They almost had Subban. And the way the story goes, according to Elliotte Friedman, is that had Columbus not taken center Pierre-Luc Dubois, 3rd overall, in the 2016 NHL Entry Draft, and if Dubois was projected to fall down to 5th overall, Vancouver's pick, which is basically where he was supposed to go. I mean, back in that year, Pierre-Luc Dubois really did make a statement for himself. Earlier in the season, I think at the beginning he was like ranked maybe in the top 20, maybe the top 10, something like that, but he really worked his way up the ranks. And I think everybody was expecting him to go in the 5-6 kind of range, but instead Columbus picked him 3rd. So had Dubois gone down to 5th overall, to Vancouver's selection, Friedman has confirmed that Vancouver would have traded the 5th overall pick to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for defenseman PK Subban. And it makes sense. It makes sense on behalf of the Canadiens because you guys know how Marc Bergevin over there loves building that culture of French, and once in a while it really does influence their decision-making just based off of things like Drouin for Sergachev. But this culture of French that the Canadiens are trying to build over there, it's not something that we're unfamiliar with. This has kind of been a thing that has been known for the past few years. So, Dubois. They wanted Dubois. Potentially their elite franchise first-line center for the Canadiens, and he's French. So that's basically the only reason they wanted him. But if you take a look at the return, and the return proposed here was PK Subban, who eventually was dealt just like a week later over there to Nashville for Shea Weber. Take a look at that return. It really does, it enforces that belief that we had a long time ago about, oh, the Canadiens, they don't like PK Subban because he has fun while he plays hockey, and he's too much of a character, and yeah, he's a good player, of course, but because he's so much of a personality and he cares only about himself, like, no, that's something that we all knew was existing amongst the Canadiens organization. So, the fact that PK Subban could have been a Canuck, it doesn't really surprise me because they were definitely getting rid of PK Subban eventually. But to what cost? Because the Vancouver Canucks here, there are some proposed deals going on online talking about things like, okay, the deal proposed was supposed to be Horvat and Tanev and the first for PK Subban, or Tanev and the first for PK Subban, or Horvat and the first-round pick for PK Subban. But, like, if we take a look at everything that would have fallen into place had PK Subban become a Vancouver Canuck, we gotta take a look at a lot of things. First off, let's start with the cap space. PK Subban's cap right now is $9 million. That's the base salary. In bonuses, he gets $2 million, so that's a total of $11 million this year. Last year saw him with the same thing. A $9 million base salary, total of $11 million, and a $2 million salary bonus. This was his salary in his first season after getting traded. So 2016-2017. So what we have to do as Canucks fans, taking a look at what if he was on our team, we gotta take a look at the Vancouver Canucks salaries from that year. So, if we go from the 2015-16 season and carry over into the summer of 2016, we got a few contracts that were coming off of the books. Radim Verbata at this time, his $5 million, it was up. Lyndon Vay's $1 million was coming up. Ronald Kennens was also coming up. We also got Yannick Weber, Bartkowski, Dan Hamhuis, all coming off of the books. And it was interesting, because alongside of these, we got guys like Brandon Prost's $2 million coming up, and a few other one-way deals, and other smaller deals as well. So, if we take a look at the team that we had, after getting rid of these expiring UFAs of the 2016 season for Bada, Vey, Kennens, Hamu, Sparkowski, Weber, all of these players, we give ourselves an extra $19 million in cap space. PK's contract was in total $11 million in this year. So, just based off of the numbers, we would have had an extra $8 million in cap space. And how we used that would have been different. Sure, guys like Burrows and Hansen, they were gone at the end of this first PK season, but just for the sake of argument, we're going to go with the salaries at the beginning of the season, and that includes guys like Burrows and Jannik Hansen. So if we take this salary, we get rid of all the free agents that were expiring, and we add $9 million, $11 million for PK Subban. Does that mean that we sign Louis Eriksson? I don't think it does. Because Louis Eriksson's contract in the first season, he gets himself $8 million. His second season, which is this season, it's $8 million as well. The season after that, it's 7, then it becomes 5, then it's 4, so it's an average annual value of $6 million. Okay, but he still comes onto the books as $8 million for this season. So, with the Vancouver Canucks and their $8 million in cap space, do we sign Eriksson to this deal? It kind of hurts me to say this, but I believe that we would have still done it. And maybe even for the same term. Because at this point in time, this is still the kind of time where the Vancouver Canucks are still trying to enforce the fact that, oh, we're a good team and whatever. And the Aquilinis are there, and they're like, oh yeah, we need to make the playoffs to make money. But there's still that sort of belief that we can get better. Because Verbata, he's gone. Okay, what's next? Eriksson comes in, and Eriksson is proposed to be the new brother of the Sedin twins, because, oh, they played together for Team Sweden and they're really good, so that means that Eriksson is going to repeat 30 goals and 30 assists, so 60 points in total, just like he did with the Bruins the most previous Bruins season. If we get PK Subban, then I think that one of the biggest things that comes across in our book is the fact that this whole movement of getting younger players sort of slows down a little bit. Because if we traded for PK Subban, I think that we would be forced to put ourselves in a position where we're getting points and getting wins and all that. I think we would have wanted to keep on to all the good talent that we had. And that includes guys like Burrows and Hansen. Thus, if we assume that this trade, which was just 5th overall pick for PK Subban, no Horvat, no Tanev, no nothing, assume that they're still on the team, because let's be honest, knowing Bergevin, he probably would have made a deal like that anyways. No disrespect, but assuming that this was the scenario here, I think that we still would have kept on to these guys. I think that we would have still been stuck in that position of trying to be competitive and win games, and ultimately we wouldn't have come away with guys like Jonathan Dahlen and Nikolai Goldolbin. But worst of all, I don't think that we would have picked in the spot that we did in the draft this year. I don't think that the Canucks with the PK Subban would have been as bad as to drop to 5th overall, as they did the most previous season. And because of that, if we got Subban last year, I don't think we would have had Elias Pettersson. Sure, that literally means that we don't have a lot of the players we have now. We won't have Juolevi because that pick would have been traded. We don't have Pettersson because Subban would have made our team better. But at the same time, I don't think that we have guys like Dahlen and Goldolbin, because we would have been forced to hold on to Hansen and Burrows because we would have wanted immediate success. Because really, if you look at the team, if you have a Subban, he probably makes the team, let's say, 10 times better than it was. So, all of a sudden, we're now, let's say we make the first round of the playoffs and we lose. We're now picking in, like, the 20s. Who do we take in the 20s? Do we take Cole Lind a little bit earlier? Okay, but we have Cole Lind now. Cole Lind isn't necessarily, like, the #1 prospect that we have in our system. So what about this timeline where he is? Does that make Subban a really good pickup for the Canucks? I have no idea. In terms of cap space, I think that actually would have been resolved because taking a look at the cap space, Ryan Miller did come off of the books at $6 million at the end of last season, so he technically would have freed up some cap as well, but whether or not guys like Burrows or Hansen stayed after the playoffs, if we made the playoffs, who knows? And after that, it really is just a mess of predictions and what could have happened if things went this way. But overall, I'm happy with this timeline. I'm happy that the Blue Jackets took Dubois, because Dubois is playing very well with the Blue Jackets right now. He's getting loads of opportunities. I really don't like the fact that Puljujärvi went to Edmonton, because for the first time, the Edmonton Oilers don't win the lottery, but they still kind of do win the lottery because they get themselves Puljujärvi. And no way am I saying that I would rather have PK Subban on this team than Olli Juolevi. Because if we had Subban on the team instead of Juolevi, who knows where we'd be at now in terms of our youth? Elias Pettersson, Dahlin, Goldolbin, where would they be? What would happen to all of our prospects that we have now? Would they still be ours? Boy, it really is weird to think about. Link down in the description to Elliotte Friedman's 31 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick talking about this situation. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plus, and gaming, and bye.